the May 9th, 2023 meeting of the City Finance Committee. We have a lot of public comment today. This might set a record, but we'll make time. So just a couple announcements in regards to public comment. Due to the number of comments, we'll do 2 minutes. If anybody needs to we need you to fill out a slip. They're over there. You can turn them in to Jen over there, and then we'll get you up here. And we have an open public comment for items not on the agenda to start, and then the item, which I think most of you are here for the fee, so I'll make that clarification. So with that, please get your comments in if you want to speak, and we will go ahead and do a roll call.
Great. Committee Member Harmon is not present. Committee Member Gutierrez.
Here.
Committee Chair Friedman.
Here. All right, we do have a quorum, so the first item is general public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to an item not on today's agenda but under the purview of the Finance Committee? Please, has anyone submitted a slip for that? I assume they're all for the item today. Is there anyone online? Please raise your hand in the app.
There are no hands raised at this time.
We will close general public comment, and I will turn it over to Mr. DeMartini for our item for today.
Thank you very much, Chair Friedman. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith DeMartini, and I'm the city's finance director. And it is my pleasure to present an overview of the agenda for today, which will be the proposed fee changes for the enterprise fund departments in the city administrator's recommended budget for fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025. The agenda for today's presentation is to provide a high-level overview of those proposed fee changes. We'll go over the remaining Finance Committee budget calendar, request that the Finance Committee receive the report, and then take any questions, public comment, and discussion. The agenda for today's presentation will be in this order. First, Downtown Parking will present their proposed changes, then the airport, then water and wastewater, golf, and then finally the waterfront department. And you can see just a high-level overview of the fees that are being proposed to be changed in the upcoming fiscal year. It's also important to note that the city, that all of these changes that are recommended in the budget are online on a consolidated master fee schedule off of the city's website under the budget reports page. So that can be accessed by all members of the public on that page. So with that, we'll turn it over to staff in the Downtown Parking Division to present their proposed fee changes.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini, Chair Friedman and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Sarah Clark, and I'm going to be presenting the proposed changes for Downtown Parking's fees for FY24. So I know we haven't gotten into more in-depth discussion of the Downtown Parking budget for FY24 yet, but when we do get to that discussion, we'll talk about how we're facing about a $2.9 million deficit for FY24, provided we make no changes, so at a status quo level. So unfortunately, we are proposing to raise some of our fees for FY24 so that we can continue to provide our services and fund our capital program. So I'm going to start by going through changes to hourly parking. So right now, we charge $2.50 per hour for parking in the parking lots, and that is after a 75-minute subsidized period of free parking. We are proposing for FY24 to go to $3 an hour, which is consistent with changes that you'll hear coming from the waterfront going forward, and reducing that subsidized period from 75 minutes to 60 minutes. So all told, that change in the hourly rate is expected to generate an additional $1.4 million each year in revenue, and the change to the subsidized period would bring in, we're estimating approximately anywhere from $600,000 to $1.2 million, depending on how conservative you are with the estimate. We're also proposing to implement something that we haven't had before, which is a daily maximum charge in the parking lots. If you've traveled to other cities, you've probably experienced this. It's fairly common in paid parking lots where your fees accrue to a certain point and then you kind of max out. And so we're proposing to set that at $33 an hour, or excuse me, $33 which is the equivalent to parking under the $3 an hour rate structure for a total of 12 hours. So that is estimated actually to cost us a little bit of money, but we feel that it is a fair rate to cap out at for customers. In the Amtrak parking lot at the depot lot, we actually offer a validation for customers who can demonstrate that they were taking Amtrak or the Greyhound bus and were parking for long term. So we currently offer a $5 a day rate for a 24-hour period. And we're proposing to increase that to $10 per day. So we did not increase that last year when we increased our hourly rate from $150 to $250. So that's due for an increase, particularly if we are planning to go to a $3 an hour rate. And that's expected to bring in a modest increase in revenue, about $28,000. And then finally, the non-surrendered ticket fee. This is for individuals who don't have their ticket upon exit, so we can't determine how much they owe. We get many fewer of these now that we have license plate recognition, because usually the camera does pick that up, but sometimes if it doesn't get a clear read, or if the customer doesn't have a front license plate, and they do also happen to lose their ticket, then we do have to charge that. So right now, again, that's set at 20 hours. We'd want to raise that to our daily maximum of $33. So next slide, please. So now I am going to discuss changes to our monthly and commuter parking permits. We did not make any changes to these last year when we raised the hourly rate. We wanted to, as much as possible, minimize the impact to commuters that would have, so people coming and working in the downtown area, and so we kept those rates the same. They were always a really good deal, but they became even more so a much better deal when we did increase the hourly rate. For the coming year, we are proposing a very small increase to those. The majority of lots would just go up $5 a month. There are a handful of lots where we'd be going from $150 up to $165 a month. Those are lots where we really have very few permit holders. In fact, lots 11 and 12, we don't currently offer permits for sale. I think we've got a total of 3 legacy permit holders in there. So it really affects a very small portion of our customers, but the goal is just to get all of those rates to the same level. We continue to hold lot 10 a little bit less expensive because that is the lot where we have the most availability. So we're moving that from $140 to $145 a month. And we're also proposing to add a few new kinds of permits for our customers. So we understand the concerns about the cost of parking being a deterrent, particularly for locals coming to downtown, and we want to do what we can to kind of mitigate that and encourage people to continue to come downtown. So we're proposing a special event permit that could be authorized for up to $75 for each permit, and that's something that we could offer in partnership with some of our community organizations for certain special events. For example, the film festival. Say you were purchasing a pass to go see films at the film festival, you'd also be able to purchase a parking permit that would be good for unlimited parking for the duration of that film festival. So again, offering a discount for people to participate in those events. We're also proposing to create what we're calling the Locals Weekender Permit. This would be, again, to encourage local residents to come downtown, particularly on the weekends. This we would sell for $100 for a period of 6 months, and it'd be valid for unlimited parking on the weekends. So something sort of comparable, again, to what the Waterfront Office offers in their lots with their harbor permit, where you can get unlimited use out of that for people who want to come downtown and continue to enjoy that on the weekend. We're also proposing, again, a modest increase to our resident or visitor parking permits. These are, we cost them out just on a cost recovery basis, so our costs have gone up fairly considerably in the last few years. So we are proposing to raise that from $35 per permit to $45 per permit, and those permits are valid for up to a year, depending on when you renew them. So we'll move on to our next slide, please. So now I know that there are going to be a lot of questions on this particular topic, so I want to provide a bit more detail. We are proposing to make some modifications to the discount that we currently offer for disabled customers in our parking lots. So right now, disabled customers are able to get the first 2.5 hours subsidized, and then they pay a maximum of only $7 per day. So they accrue hourly fees after that first 2.5 hours, but then those fees top out at $7 a day. So we didn't make any changes to that last year when we raised our hourly parking rate. So it was due for an update regardless, but the change that we're proposing is really an operational one. And that is, in order for us to offer this discount, we have to manually validate out our disabled customers. So they have to request the validation, and then our staff has to manually enter that validation, and then they get charged the discounted rate. And this, it poses some challenges for us as we move towards a more self-service model, and that's the direction that we've received both from council and from our downtown parking committee, is to save on our staffing costs and hold our staffing costs down by continuing to move more towards an automated parking model. So because this requires staff to either be present in the kiosk to process that validation, or it requires the customer to use the call button on the column, call into our office, request the validation, and then have staff remotely push that validation to the exit column. It creates delays on exit, and it requires a much more high-touch approach to serving our customers. So we're proposing to continue to offer a discount for disabled customers, but offer it in a bit of a different way. We offer prepaid cards for any of our customers right now. You can purchase them in our office or online. And those work kind of like a gift card or like a Starbucks card, where you have a certain amount of money on it, you can add money and recharge it, and you use it just like a credit card to pay at exit. So you'd be able to pay just by holding it up to the ticket column at exit. So we're proposing to implement a discounted rate for customers with disabilities on those prepaid cards. So up to $120 a month to purchase at a 30% discount off the face value. And then they could use this card without having to ask for a validation at exit to still give them a discount that works out to be pretty comparable to the current maximum. If you're looking at just the number of hours that people are parked in the parking lot under that $7, if you look at that as 6 hours worth of parking under the old $1.50, that goes to, it would cost about $12.50, or excuse me, $12.60 under the new 30% discount. So it's not a huge increase, but it is a bit of a different way of providing that discount. So we can go to the next slide, please. And then finally, we have a couple of new fees that we're proposing to introduce to allow us to provide some different services to our businesses and to sort of test some things out. So the first two are a validation license annual fee and a validation annual program fee. And we would like to pilot a program where we offer businesses in the downtown area who wish to participate at certain lots the ability to validate customers out and to provide basically extra subsidized parking for them. So the way that would work would be the business would pay these annual fees, which would allow them to get either a little kiosk machine to put into their business, or they can just do it from a computer, any computer terminal. They would be able to offer their customers parking validation. So let's say they want to offer 2 hours free or 3 hours free for their customers. They can do that by validating, and then at the end of the month, we round up all those charges, and then we're able to bill the business for that. So the business basically is able to pick up the tab for their customers for parking if that's something they want to do. So we're interested in trying that out, which is why we've placed these fees here. These just cover the program administration as well as the annual license fee for our revenue control equipment provider that they charge. And then finally, the last one is a custom prepaid card setup fee. This is just a minor thing. As I described earlier, we do offer prepaid cards, and sometimes businesses like to purchase these either for their customers or sometimes for their employees. Because we make those prepaid cards in-house, we can actually customize how they look. And so we've had some businesses express an interest in getting customized prepaid cards with their own branding on it to match their business. And so we can offer that for just a small one-time setup fee so that we can cover the cost of making those design changes. So.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We'll do questions at the end because we want to make sure we get through all the presentations.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and Finance Committee, members of the public. I'm Jonathan Abad, presenting the fee changes for fiscal 24 for the airport department. First off, a little bit about the airport. The airport is an enterprise fund department, part of the city, and we generate our own revenues from tenant rents and user fees, and we have no general fund subsidies. And today we'll be presenting our fees changes for our parking and new permit fees. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Starting with parking, we're proposing to eliminate the fee for the first 15 minutes on the short-term parking. So first 15 minutes free, just hopefully to kind of alleviate the congestion in the loop, encourage people to use the short-term parking more. And as for the hourly rates, we're proposing an increase of $2, slowly trying to align with the rest of the downtown parking and waterfront on the hourly rates. And for the overflow lot, we're proposing an increase of $3 a day to 15, again to align with like the waterfront's overnight parking, and also to catch up on a large increase in expenses to the shuttle service now that we're running that pretty much all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Annually, the cost has really gone up. And we're also increasing $1 to the long-term rate. Overall, that's probably going to generate about $300,000 in additional revenue right about then. The overflow lot, although that's the largest increase, it's only about 10% of overall parking revenue. So the 20%, it's only about 2.5% increase on that portion of it. Next slide, please. Now, the other fees we're proposing is new permitting fees, and this is to align with accordance to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and which states that it's unlawful for any person to engage in any business or commercial activities or provide any services on the airport unless they have a fixed place of business or a specific operating area signed by the airport director on the airport, which is occupied by virtue of a lease, operating permit, license, rental agreements with the City of Santa Barbara permitting such activities as recommended by the Airport Commission and as required or approved, if necessary, by the City Council. Next slide, please. And for the special events fees, if it meets any of the criteria of requiring road closures, ticket for entry, requiring security, 75 or more attendees, use of sound amplification, erection of any structure, service of alcoholic beverage, use of any facilities, airport. If it meets any of that criteria, it would need special event fees. And the other fees are the commercial and non-commercial activities. Pretty much any aviation activities in the airport would be subjected to fees. And next. And also we're proposing photo shoot and filming permit fees, which is already required by the rest of the city, Parks and Recs and Waterfront. We're just keeping in alignment with the Santa Barbara Municipal Code and introducing these permit fees. Thanks. And I guess I'm going to have Mr. Chris Hastert just kind of explain a little bit more.
I'm sorry, we could go back to the permit fee one.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Friedman and Finance Committee members and members of the public. I thought I would just go into a little bit more detail on the permit fees because it is a new fee that is being established. And as you can see with the turnout for public comment, that there's going to be a lot of questions. So I thought I'd provide just a little bit more information about that fee. So we have a minimum standards requirements document that was approved by City Council, and that requires a permit to be issued for several different types of activities. Those could be the non-commercial activity permit, which would be flying clubs primarily, or commercial activity permits, which would be independent flight instructors, independent mechanics, things of that nature. So the minimum standards were approved to set a level playing field for all of the people doing business on the Santa Barbara Airport. And the fee is not that structure to make it a level playing field. It's really to make sure that we have an agreement with everybody that's doing business on the airport for business license, insurance, all of those types of requirements. So the fee is actually based on cost recovery, and so I can talk about that in a little bit more detail, but the fee is not set to create that level playing field. That's the minimum standards document. The fee is just separate, and it's based on cost recovery. The fee that we came up with is not influenced at all by any of the airport users nor the commission members. I know there's been some controversy about who set this fee. I can tell you it was set entirely by airport staff using a formula based on salaries and the amount of time that we expect to spend on this permit process. Because this is a new fee, this is just an estimate for the first year, and because, as you see with all of the turnout, every time we've talked about minimum standards or permit fees, it's generated quite a bit of tension between some of the airport users. And so we anticipate that the first year that this program is implemented, there's going to be a considerable amount of time spent administering this program. There really shouldn't be much of a debate about what that fee is. So we didn't have public meetings to try to set that fee. It's not based on market costs. It's really based just on cost recovery. We did compare it to neighboring airports just to the south. Ventura County Airports, their fee is just under $2,000. That's a program that's been in place for several years. And obviously their salaries and other rates specific to their county are not exactly the same as Santa Barbara. Approximately 5 years ago, they did try to implement a very similar fee, and the calculation that the staff came up with at the time was $2,500. That did not ultimately go through, but it shows very consistent in the determination of these fees. And then, while it's applicable to flying clubs, there has been some public comment out there that I'm aware of that there's the perception that this is going to be applied towards partnerships on aircraft. So if there's a couple of members that, or a couple of people that get together to buy an aircraft, that we would consider that a flying club, and we would be charging that fee to those as well. That is not the intention of this permit. That's not the intention of the fee. It's really to follow the minimum standards. And if there is a nonprofit group that is set up for the purpose of operating a flying club, yes, they would be required to obtain this kind of a permit. And the last thing I would say is just because this fee is new and this is an estimate, that we could be a little bit off in that estimation. But as this program proceeds in future years, we would obviously be taking a look at how this, how much time is spent on this and how much cost recovery should look into the future fees. With that, it was discussed at the Airport Commission. We did have some public comment. The commission did approve it. It was not unanimous. And one of the focuses was on the amount of this fee. The direction from the commission was to approve it as is presented to you today, with a look in 6 months to see how applicable the fee actually is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hasser. I appreciate the clarifications. I'm sure there will be some questions at the end.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and committee members. My name is Gabrielle Cook, and I am the Water Resources Financial Officer, and I'm here to present the proposed fee changes for water and wastewater. Water and wastewater have fees that fall into two basic categories. They are installation and permitting fees. An example of this would be the construction of a new water service. And then there's also capacity charges. And capacity charges are the cost to buy into the existing capacity of the water or wastewater systems. Last year, the methodology for updating the capacity charges was approved by Council, along with the fiscal year 23 budget. And so the methodology is to increase the capacity charges by the construction cost index, or the CCI, and then recost the fee every 5 years. And since we recost the fee last year, we are proposing a 3% increase for fiscal year 24. Okay. For the installation and permitting fees, we also recost this fee every 5 years. And for water, we are proposing two new fees that are related to the automated metering infrastructure program. And I will go into those fees in the next couple of slides. We did recost several fees in water, and some of those decreased and some of those increased. The increases were mainly due to the increase in the cost of materials. For all other fees that were not recosted, we are proposing a 5% service fee increase. For wastewater, there are no proposed new fees, and we are proposing an across-the-board 5% increase that is consistent with a lot of the other departments. We also added minor fee clarification, just to make our fees read a little more easily and clearly for the public. For the sewer lateral inspection program fees, we are proposing a 60% increase in those, but that is for our competitively bid contractor, and it is a cost recovery for those fees. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposed new fees in water, and they are related to the Automated Metering Infrastructure, or AMI, program. So the first fee is the initial setup fee. And as a reminder, we are in the middle of our AMI implementation project, where we are installing radios on our meters for our customers. This allows us to read the customer meter reads remotely every hour, instead of having a staff member go out and read manually these meter reads. So the cost for this opt-out fee, the initial setup opt-out fee, is tied to staff time for removal of the AMI device from the water meter and also removal from the software systems. And this one-time fee is proposed at $49. Okay. The second fee is our monthly or ongoing fee related to the opt-out. So if customers do choose to opt out of the AMI program, we will have to send somebody out to manually read those meters and input them into our billing system. And so the ongoing fee each month is proposed at $16 per month. And those are the changes that are proposed for water and wastewater. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and council members. I'm Tina Nelson. I'm the business manager for the Parks and Recreation Department, presenting the Golf Fund proposed fees and charges for fiscal year 24. Similar to the general fund, we take many things into consideration when we're establishing our fees for the new fiscal year. We look to maximize participation. We want to target the different markets or introduce new markets, keep the interest in golf going. We look at what our competition is doing, what benefits the community might have from these fees, or to make sure that there is community benefit in them, and the cost of labor and water increases, and also the capital needs program. As it is an enterprise fund, the golf course is completely dependent on the revenue it generates to reinvest in the infrastructure. Next slide, please. Recommended fee changes in fiscal year 24 are fairly nominal. We're proposing $1 increases for green fees across the board. Cart fees as well would be a $1 increase. We're proposing no increase to driving range small and medium-sized buckets, and $10 and $20 increases corresponding with the range value keys, which is similar to a gym membership, where you would go and you would have access to the driving range for the month, and then similar $5 increase to the monthly practice club to bring it from $75 to $80 a month. Here's some examples of some recommended fee changes for you. A $1 increase on 9 holes from $30 to $31 per round for a weekday resident. Same thing, $1 from $45 to $46 per round for 18 holes during the week for residents. We do define residents as tri-county residents, so for golf, we do want all of our neighboring communities to also utilize the golf course, so we do have a tri-county resident rate. 9 holes and 18 holes, we're proposing no increase for the junior rates. It will remain at $16 per round, and this would be for ages 17 and under 7 days a week, so there's no weekend rate for juniors as well. $18 to $19 on cart fees, 7 days a week, and no change to the replay rate. It's still a 50% discount 7 days a week. And that concludes my presentation of the Golf Fund. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman, council members. Next slide. My name is Cesar Barrios. I am the Waterfront Department Business Manager. and today I'll be presenting the Waterfront's fiscal year 24 proposed fee adjustments. To begin, I would like to provide an overview of the Waterfront Department. As an enterprise fund, the Waterfront Department receives no general fund support and is relying solely on revenues generated within the waterfront. On that regard, we only have three major revenue sources, which are slip fees, tenant fees, and parking fees. Next slide, please. Starting with fee adjustments to our parking program, the most significant fee adjustment pertains to parking rates, increasing at all waterfront lots from $2.50 to $3 per hour, which is projected to generate approximately $540,000 in revenue. This, as a function of this, we're also increasing the proposed fee for the wharf hourly parking rate from $3 to $3.50 an hour, generating approximately $45,000 in revenue. Also, at our last council budget meeting last Friday, May 5th, the council suggested we increase the annual parking permit fee from the proposed $5 increase originally proposed for this coming year. So in that regard, we're proposing an additional increase of $5, so to $10 per year at $135 for the new proposed fee for this parking permit. Currently is at $125. So this would generate approximately $25,000 in additional revenue for that program. It's still very economical way to park at the waterfront year-round. Next slide. So under the permitted miscellaneous, another notable proposed fee increase is the cruise ship passenger fee increase. It's going from $10 per passenger to $15. This is projected to generate approximately $15,000 in additional revenue over the fiscal year 23. And just to give you a perspective, the cruise ships bring approximately just under $500,000 a year per including all the visitors. Another proposed fee increase with notable impacts. It's the increase to the cost of ice at the city pier. We're proposing to increase this fee from 5 cents to 10 cents per pound, and this would generate approximately $35,000 in additional revenue. And it's worth noting that even though this increase, it appears significant, the cost recovery is very minimal, as it costs nearly $1 million overall to maintain this ice housing, speaking bigger picture and the benefit that it brings to all the fishermen in the area. Also, as illustrated here, we have other inflationary increases that would affect the BAP parking permits. BAP permits, including the outrigger canoes, Santa Barbara Sailing, Youth Foundation beach tracks that generally they use to park their equipment on West Beach. Next slide. So in regards to boat slip and mooring fees, we, as the department, understand some of these fees are historically higher than the average annual increases, but these are measures that we're taking in response to the economy demands. Most notably, the 10% slip and liveaboard fee, which will likely increase or generate over $500,000 in additional revenue. Also, we're proposing to increase the visiting vessel fee by 25 cents per foot for vessels under 65 feet, and 50 cents per foot for vessels over 65 feet in length. Among these fee increases, we also include an increase to the vessel impound from $100 to $250, and this increase is necessary to recover labor and administrative costs that takes to impound a vessel. That includes harbor patrol time, vessel use and equipment, as well as admin staff. Next slide. Moving on to slave transfer fees. These are the fee adjustments proposed for the reduction in transfer fees for slip sizes 35 feet or less, while increasing the fee for slips over 50 feet. In addition, we propose to reduce the slip transfer fee for commercial fishing slips from $400 to $350 per foot. This next slide I have will provide additional information on that. Next slide. So in 2021, the Slip Assignment Policy Subcommittee recommended the Harbor Commission to discuss the implementation of a slip transfer fee structure that is more fair and proportional across slip sizes, as smaller sizes or permittees would potentially be paying more in proportion to the larger slips over time. So to address this, the Waterfront Department determined that reducing fees for slip sizes 35 feet or less would be appropriate. This was done in order to maintain equity and value of slips in the Santa Barbara Harbor. Next slide. So this table better describes that implementation timeline through fiscal year 2029, with fiscal year 2024 in green. Also to clarify, these are neutral, revenue neutral adjustments, again, done proportionally to decrease the transfer fee on smaller slips while increasing the transfer fee on the larger slips. Next slide. Okay, so this table provides a summary of the total impactful proposed fees for the waterfront, which are critical to balance our budget, potentially generating $1.2 million in additional revenue. Considering increases to our allocated costs, these revenues will help us continue our operations, such as capital projects, and not having any potential cuts to our operating budget in the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to wrap up staff's presentation, this is the third meeting before the Finance Committee as it's in relation to the proposed budget. Last week, we reviewed the proposed fee changes for general funded departments. Today, we are here before you for enterprise fund departments. There is no action item before the committee today. We're just simply providing information to you, and then we'll receive your final recommendations and actions at next week's meeting, where we will also review general fund tax and revenue assumptions, and then any staff recommended more technical changes to the budget as well. That concludes staff's presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Before I open up to questions for staff from my colleagues, just to clarify, Mr. DeParent, we're not taking any action today, but if there was a discussion of changing any of the recommended, you would take that and incorporate it into what's coming to us next week.
Yes, Chair Friedman, that is correct. We'll take your feedback today, and then we'll incorporate it in our presentation next Tuesday. Thank you.
And then I will ask that if there's anybody who joined us after we started, if you want to speak on public comment, there are slips on the right there. And so you just need to fill one out and turn it in. And with that, I'll open up to questions from my colleagues. Member Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Thank you very much. Ms. Clark, I just see you standing. Thank you. Just have a couple of questions on slide 7, please, Mr. DeMartini. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. I really appreciate this, and I just want to try to understand this a little bit more. So the bottom line here is the alternative that has been developed to try to ensure that the same benefit is still accessible for people. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair Friedman, Councilmember Harmon. The goal is to continue to provide discounted parking to customers with disabilities, but to do it in a way that limits delays at exit and is more conducive to having self-service and not needing staff assistance to process every one of those validations. And we process about 20,000 of those a year, so it's a pretty common request.
So how then are we seeing an anticipated additional $50,000 in revenue if the purpose is not to lower the subsidy, but just to deal with staff? Is this because we anticipate a certain number of people not participating in this prepaid card system? I don't know where does the 50,000 come from?
Sure. So the 50,000 up there is just for the elimination of the validation for disabled customers. So it doesn't take into account the prepaid card. And I'm sorry, that's a little bit confusing.
Oh,
That's
okay.
just sort of the value of that. Like I said, we're not doing this for a budgetary or financial reason. We didn't factor this revenue into our revenue estimates in
I
any
see.
way.
Okay.
It's just to give a sense of what the value is of those validations that we have been providing
Thank
over
you.
the years.
That,
Yeah.
thank you. That makes sense. So when we moved to this automated system, I remember part of the conversation we had is about the various technologies and what can be done. Is there no technological way to accomplish what it is that we're trying to do? Like, is there no plug-in we can add into the system so folks don't have to think about going to get a prepaid card first? Have we talked to the provider of our automated system to see if they have any technology solutions for this issue rather than getting rid of it altogether?
Sure. Chair Freeman, Councilmember Harmon, that is something that we have explored. With our current revenue control system, there really is no way to do that. There's no way for the system to recognize, for example, a disabled license plate or a disabled parking placard in the window without having somebody there to verify that that is in fact the case. Something that could be done would be like a sort of a permit parking kind of thing. A disabled customer could purchase a parking permit at the rates that were shown up there, which does also offer a very considerable discount for somebody who's coming down, particularly for employment purposes. That would end up being probably very cost effective. But in terms of the system being able to distinguish a disabled customer from somebody who is not disabled, there really is no way to do that.
I hear you. I guess my concern, and I'll save most of this for comments, is just seems like quite an added burden for folks to have to access the prepaid card first in order to get this benefit. Have we thought at all about, I'm just going to throw this out there, though I realize that it may be so off the wall, an honor system where folks can select which rate applies to them? I mean, have we done any thinking about whether that could work? I'd like to imagine that most people would be ethical in their choices, or is that just way too complicated and that's...
Chair Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, that is not feasible under our current system. There's no, right now we just have people paying self-service either through the Pay by Phone app, or not app, but through the Scan Pay Go web link, or at the exit column. And there's not any kind of alternative button or anything to summon a different fee. I would also caution, you would like to think that people would be ethical about something like that. But I can pretty much assure you that if there is a button available for anyone to press that gives them a substantial discount on parking, that most people will probably press that. Wow. And so,
wild. Okay. And then my final question on this: if we were to think about making a move like this, would it be possible to do some kind of pilot program where you continue to offer the subsidized hourly rate and offer this prepaid card option, and we can see, whether folks take advantage of it, whether it reduces the amount of backup and staff time? I guess my concern is just making this move full stop all at once could really be a burden on folks. So if we're going to go this direction, and if it really is something that's necessary, is there a way that we could pilot it or try? I mean, because it might solve a big part of the problem if you give the option of the prepaid card for folks, and some people who know they're downtown a lot can get that card, and then maybe instead of 100% of the time you have to call someone for the column, only 20% of the time, and it's no longer such a big bottleneck. Did you guys think about approaching it in that way, or does your office really think it's got to be all or nothing?
Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Harmon, there's nothing to stop us from doing both at the same time, continuing to offer the validation as well as offering a discount card. The two things that I would recommend in that case, the first would be to update that hourly parking rate for disabled customers to be reflective of our current or our proposed FY23, or excuse me, FY24 rate structure. So that would be reducing the subsidized period from 2.5 hours to 2 hours and bringing that maximum per day up to probably about 12 hours. That is roughly the equivalent of what this would have been under the
it's analogous,
$1.50.
yeah.
Correct, so that's analogous. What I would caution against, the thing that we would probably be concerned about is that there's nothing to stop a customer from requesting the validation and using the discounted prepaid card at the same time. So purchasing that prepaid card at a discount, then requesting a further discount at the column and combining the two. So we could pilot it and see how that worked. That's certainly a possibility, but it would be something that we would have to keep an eye on.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ms. Clark. Thank you, Mr. Friedman.
Any questions for Ms. Clark?
Yes, questions. Do city workers have any type of discounts in our current parking lot? And which departments are the ones that are using this city parking lots the most?
Chair Friedman, Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez, it depends, I guess, on what you mean by discount. So there are some departments that where the employees do not pay for parking, specifically the police department for people who are stationed at the 911 call center, because they essentially lease that space from downtown parking, and one of the provisions of their lease is that it includes parking. Previously environmental services, when they were, now sustainability and resilience, but when they were upstairs, they had the same provision in their MOU with us. Downtown parking employees don't pay. That's part of our cost of maintaining the facility and providing the service. We would just be essentially paying ourselves. And then also, city staff, while they're on city business, do not pay. So for example, if you drive a city car to go to a meeting and you park in a city lot, we'll validate you out for that. Or if you're on a training or something like that, then we do offer validation for that, as long as you're, again, on official city business. For the departments who don't have parking in their facility where they're located, for example, City Hall is one of them, where the parking lot is limited and not everybody gets a space there, then we do have city staff who choose to purchase a parking permit in one of our parking lots. They may also choose to park on the street or take transit. We are currently, actually just had a meeting today about going into a pilot program for next year, where there will be some cost share for employees in the city, where departments will pick up the majority of the tab if they need to purchase spaces for their employees.
So for the library staff, that parking lot's right next to the library, and I would think that the parking space for the library staff is that parking lot. And how much do they have to pay? Are they being considered for this next year's pilot program that you just mentioned?
Chair Freeman, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, yes, they would be participating in that pilot program. Yes, the library is located right next to one of our city parking lots, but the maintenance and the costs associated with that parking lot are not shared by the library. So they have to pay for the service of using the parking lot, just like they have to pay for their water bill or for any other city service that they're using. So, this is the service that we provide in downtown parking, and, proximity to the parking lot is not, what dictates the rates for that.
So specifically the library staff, right now, they don't have like a lower fee if they use that parking lot?
Chair Freeman, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, we have in the past, and we continue to, if they wish, offer free permits in the Carrillo commuter lot, which is a bit of a walk, but we do offer those for free to library staff. But if they wish to park in this case, the Granada Garage is what they generally use, then they would need to pay for that. So,
thank you.
I have a couple questions for you, and then I'll have some for Mr. Hastert after this. Thank you, Ms. Clark. I think most of my questions in terms of disabled parking, but a couple follow-ups. if we were to switch this system, would the button that you can push still be available for someone who's going out? Because now they can either have the card, or they can either the person's there at the kiosk, or they can check them out and they can obviously verify, or you can, if no one's there, you can push the button. Is that still available?
Chair Freeman, yes, we will always have the call buttons available on our columns. We also have a number listed on our column for people who can't reach the column, or for deaf customers who need to text. So we give them that option as well if they need to contact us.
So in a case where that would still be available to get the discounted rate through that option if it came to that, if they didn't have the prepaid card.
Well, our proposal here is to eliminate that discounted rate. So that would not continue to remain available. It would be replaced by the prepaid card. It wouldn't be an either or.
Okay. And then I think that's where you were going. And then, so my other question then is, since you reflected that this is more operational rather than revenue, what if we had a recommendation to lower the discounted rate, to say instead of 30%, it's or raise it, I should say, to a 50% discounted rate? Would that still work within the system that you're proposing?
Chair Freeman, yeah, we could offer that discount at any price point. That would be up to your recommendations, how you want to direct staff.
Okay. Now, I have some, if you could pull up slide 5. So this is always, raising the rates is always a tough one, but the 75 to the 60 is also something that I think that is going to come when it comes to council. There will be a bigger discussion than today. So if you could help me understand, what is the revenue if we were at $3 an hour but we left the 75 minutes?
Sure, Chair Freeman, so that would just be the top line, the hourly rate. So that additional 1.2, it's really a range, like, depending on how customers adjust their behavior, between 600,000 and 1.2 million for that 15-minute reduction in the subsidized period. But the change in just the hourly rate is the top line. So we're expecting it to bring in about additional 1.4.
And then the change from the 75 to 60 is 1.2
Correct.
million.
Yeah.
Or estimated 600,000 to 1.2.
Yeah.
So if the council or finance, we want to make a recommendation to keep the 75 minutes at this point, that would have that 600 to 1.2 million impact to your overall budget, which is in a structural deficit, you said, of 2.9 million. Do you have numbers that if we increased the hourly rate to $3.50 rather than $3, but kept the 75 minutes, what would that do in terms of mitigating that 600,000 to 1.2 million?
Chair Friedman, yes, that would offset that loss from not making that change. So we would estimate that going to $3.50 and maintaining the 75-minute subsidized period would bring in an additional $1.6 to $2.2 million annually.
Okay, so if we went to $3.50 per hour and kept the 75, that would offset the shift down to 60. Okay.
That's correct.
And I think that is all I had for Ms. Clark. Are there questions of other staff? Okay, so Ms., you have other questions? You're up.
Airport.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. And Airport, you're up. Mr. Hastert.
That 15-minute rate that went up, I think you guys mentioned how you want to encourage people to use the short-term lot, to not have so much of the cars in the front. But has anybody really done that walk of, parking and then walking and making sure your loved ones or whoever you're dropping off, is 15 minutes enough?
So thank you, Chair Friedman, Councilmember Gutierrez. So the Terminal Loop Road currently gets a lot of congestion, and people sit there not necessarily wanting to walk in and make sure that their loved ones are set off or picking them up right away. It usually comes with, I know the flight arrived, they're waiting for their baggage. I want to sit in front of the curb for 5 or 10 minutes. So currently we have an unofficial 7 minutes. So if you accidentally go into the lot and don't realize it's either full or you didn't mean to go in there, you can get out. We're trying to make that official now with 15 minutes. And that would also encourage people, maybe if your person isn't necessarily ready at the curb, you can pull into a lot, wait for just a minute, and then pull back out.
Thank you. And then on slide 13, the proposed new special events and activity permit fees. On the last little note there on the, an aviation non-commercial activity is defined as, could you give me more explanation? So, for example, these nonprofits will also be charged this new fee?
So, thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. When we look at the non-commercial activity permits, we're really focused on what is in the minimum standards as far as permits. And so that's what's listed out there. We could probably do a little bit better at clarifying, because I know there are people that think that we're going to charge it to every partnership on every private aircraft that is out there, and that is not the intention. So it's really looking at all of the non-commercial activities, and then we are also looking at bringing back something in the future to be able to potentially waive a fee if it's for a nonprofit like Alpha Resources with a plane pole or something like that, kind of a non-commercial event.
Thank you. And that's it for airport.
All right, while you're up, I have a couple follow-up questions. You mentioned that in Ventura, for similar program, maybe not exactly the same, but they're about 2,000, and this is an estimate of what it would cost for cost recovery, so we might be conservative, we might not. If we were to look at a lower rate for the annual permit for this year, would that affect the budget, or would it be something that is in line with, it's a new rate, we can put it in and study it to see where we are, and then adjust it in the coming years after we have more data?
So thank you for the question, Chair Freeman. I think it's not unreasonable to look at that, just as you have said. The actual impact to the budget will be minimal. At the moment, just for the independent flight instructors, who I would estimate are the ones that would be most likely to obtain an annual permit, probably only a handful of people. So whatever difference you're proposing multiplied by, at most probably 4 or 5 people. The daily rate is more applicable to some of the maintenance facilities coming out of, say, LAX or John Wayne, or somewhere coming up to work on a specific aircraft that may be stuck here with an issue or something like that. So not likely to apply as much to the daily rate, but the annual would be just a handful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hastert, and you had further questions?
Yes, it's on slide 27 for waterfront. The passenger and loading ramp fee from its current to $7 and it's going up to 10. Is there a possibility that we can do a $5 increase since we're increasing the passenger fee? So from 10 for it to go to 12?
Chair Friedman, Councilmember Gutierrez, yeah, we can make an assessment and take a look into doing that. So you're basically saying to increase it from $10 to $12 per?
Yes, so it could be a $5 increase. Is it?
I believe it's from $7 to $12. It's
Yeah.
the passenger loading ramp, the second item down.
Yeah.
So go from 7 to 12.
Oh, apologize. Okay, certainly. Okay, so the passenger loading ramps are Stearns Wharf.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, that's unrelated to the cruise ships, though.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
It's that one.
It's that one, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, we can certainly look at our figures and move forward with that recommendation. Yeah, I don't see a reason why not.
That was it. That's all the questions.
Don't go now. I just want to clarify that you said that is not related to the cruise ships, or is partially to the cruise ships?
The passenger loading ramp fee is not. That's for any vessel that docks to or wraps to the wharf and they unload passengers through the PLR, the ramp that's adjacent to the wharf. That could be for any of our tenants, perhaps, that do boat cruises, that sort of stuff. The cruise ship passenger fee increase, that's specific to the manifest of the cruise ship itself. So whenever a cruise ship arrives and let's say they have 3,000 passengers, but only 2,000 get off the ship, they still pay for the full manifest of that ship, and that's the 10 to 15 increase. The 7 to 10 on the below item, that's just for the use of the ramp at the wharf to unload passengers.
That's it. Thank you.
Just a couple of clarification questions. If you could go to slide 26. The parking annual permit, again, that came out of council, it says 125 to 130. The impact is 25,000. And just based on what you said, is the 25,000 if it was to go to $135, or is it at the 130 rate that's here?
Chair Freeman, that's at the going to the originally proposed fee.
So if it went to 135,
There'll
we
be an
have an-
8% increase.
so it would be an addition to the 25.
Additional, correct.
Okay. And then just another question, since at the presentation to your budget to council, the non-Stearns Wharf, so the waterfront parking lots rates are tied to the downtown parking. So if we raise it downtown parking, then you try to match that at the waterfront lots, as I understand it.
Chair Freeman, well, they're not tied up. They're not
Try to
tied to each other, but we try to have a consistency around the uses around the city, so it's consistent
consistency.
for visitors as well.
So if we made potential changes to downtown parking due to the 75/60, and if we wanted to address that, that would be independent of the waterfront. So it wouldn't, if say we went to $3.50, it wouldn't force the waterfront to go to $3.50.
Chair Freeman, that is correct.
Okay, I just needed that clarification. Thank you. Any further questions for any staff members? All right, thank you. So now we're going to move on to public comment due to the number of speakers, and we do have a 2 o'clock council meeting. It will be 2 minutes, so if anybody wants to speak, again, you have the speaker slips over here on the right. Please turn them in, and if you are online, please raise your hand in the app, and I'll keep that open until 10 after, so you have about 6 minutes, and then at 10 after, if your hand isn't raised, I will close online comment. So the first speaker is Vince Merstick, followed by Dennis Durienfield, followed by Devin Durienfield.
Good afternoon. Yesterday afternoon, I sent you folks written comments.
Is that mic on?
It's not on.
Speaker's not working?
There we go.
Okay. Yesterday afternoon, I sent you folks a rather extensive written comment, and so I'm not going to dwell on all of that right now. I'm going to focus on 2 things that came up today that I think make it evident that the proposed airport permit fees is seriously flawed. The proposal includes an annual fee, as you saw, of $2,972 for all users, and a single day fee of $300 for some users and $303 for other users. The precision of these dollar amounts might suggest a detailed analysis was undertaken, when in fact the quoted numbers are in reality quite arbitrary and capricious. The fixed annual fee is terribly discriminatory against small business and will no doubt drive essential certified instructors and independent mechanics out of business. Not only will this deny local aircraft owners and pilots their essential obligation for safety of flight, it could place the city in serious legal jeopardy should accidents result. Secondly, supporting this, the administration claims that the proposed fees were derived by careful consideration of the fees at selected other airports. I want to make you aware that Ventura County is one of the cited airports that you heard about today, yet the proposal before you, there is no prorating of or even a mention of the fact that the fees at Ventura County Airport are prorated according to the amount of insurance a mechanic does on the airport. You're kidding.
2 minutes goes by fast. Thank you for your...
I'm glad you have my written comments, and I hope you will take it.
Dennis Durienfield.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I just want to say that in our heart of hearts, we have to decide what is the motivation for the change. And what's the motivation? Is it money? Well, the money will kill, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot by increasing the fees for people from the airport. More planes, more pilots. That's what we need. We need a vital, thriving airport, and we need more pilots, and we need more people flying. And that's going to increase our revenue. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Devin Durenfield, followed by Carl Hopkins, followed by Gregory Durenfield.
Good afternoon. I'm Devin Darenfield. I'm representing both independent flight instructors, mechanics, and a user of the airport because I have 2 airplanes myself. The fee structure currently in the past was a $150 business license fee at the city plus a permit fee at the airport, which I believe cost about $200. So it was about a $300 a year fee. The fee that's been proposed now for such as myself, I'm an airline pilot, I don't flight instruct very much, maybe 10 hours a year at the most for people that need my service, being a high-time guy that has very specific skill set to help people. What you're going to do with these fee structure is take a fee. I asked the director how the fee structure works. He's proposing what it costs to submit a permit right now is $113.47 an hour for labor, I believe was the number, and it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour time allotted to issue a permit. So that fee is about $247.97. That's what it takes right now. He just told me that on a meeting this last Thursday. So to go to a $300 per hour a day fee, and by the way, I have the fee structure. I brought it from Camarillo Airport. Their fee structure for independent flight instructors is a one-time $199 fee plus a $35 per day charge, or an annual fee of $1,879. When I asked the airport yesterday, because I was down there talking to the director there, that is not, the independent flight instructors is not enforced at all. They have free reign to go on the field. There's no policing power or anything to check on who's using it. The only thing they're worried about is independent mechanics, which is the second part of my concern. There's absolutely no place to do independent maintenance at this time for our aircraft other than using the one maintenance facility who has in turn rejected our use for certain people. So there's a safety issue going on as well. So I want to make it.
Time up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Hopkins.
Thank you. All of you should have received an email from me listing my detailed comments. The first thing I would like to point out is the reason there are so many people in this room today is because there were so few people at the Airport Commission meeting where this was discussed. The reason was very simple. The subject was proposed 2-year operating and capital budget for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 and airline rates and charges. Unless you read all of the detail, including the footnotes, you did not realize that this applied that this issue was even going to come up. The second thing I'd like to point out is what Devin just pointed out. $3,000, I'll round it off, $3,000 a year fee to earn $10,000 seems a little bit excessive. As I pointed out, I've talked to a number of the independent flight instructors. They're not very many. The one that earns the most earns $15,000 a year. A $3,000 fee to earn $15,000 a year seems excessive by a long shot. What's worse, in a sense, is that all of the other flight instructors, like Devin, who have much, much more experience than any of the full-time flight instructors available, they are being asked to pay $3,000 when they might not even earn $3,000 a year. So the fees that we have today, I think, are more than adequate. Just a basic. I don't know why we can issue a badge for $25, a TSA badge, and yet $300 to say, yes, you have insurance, yes, you are a licensed CFI, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Gregory Durenfield, followed by Robert Palmer, followed by, it's hard to read, Craig Alberti.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. I want to start out with the impetus, as the airport mentioned in the slides up here for this proposed changes was in the Santa Barbara Municipal Code of Business Activity, which says any business or commercial activity, yet they have a non-commercial fee structure in that, which I find concerning. So you're having this situation where, hey, the impetus is commercial, but all these non-commercial people, this also applies to them. There's a rich history of this issue going on for the better part of a decade at the airport. And while they do say, this is not going to be charged to partnerships, this is not going to be charged to businesses operating an aircraft or anything like that, unless it's in writing, I just don't have any faith in that, in that statement. They say the fees are associated with minimum standards to make a level, or not associated. The MSR is what produces the level playing field. So are we to understand that these fees are charged to all instructors, even at a fixed place of business? That doesn't seem to be the case. But if it's all about a level playing field, I would think that should be something that would apply. Also, there's no specifics on the cost. You saw other members doing their due diligence to find out what these fees are at other airports. Of course, we haven't seen that, at least publicly, from the airport administration. By the airport's own representative, there's less independent flight instructors on the field than you can count on one hand. So this is tantamount to going after a fly with a bazooka from a annual fee standard. I just don't think the value and the experience that these independents bring is worth charging them $3,000 a year for. They're bringing a priceless service to the pilots. What works? $400 a year. That's what works. When you look at their numbers, as a CFI, $400 a year, and let me instruct there as an independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, Robert Palmer, followed by Craig Albertier and Mark Mattingly.
My name is Robert Palmer. I'm just a private pilot. I use the airport. We have a hangar there. And I guess I'm concerned about the fees for a number of reasons. It seems like it's an assault on general aviation at the airport. And I think we all want a healthy, robust environment at the airport that allows for a broad range of activities. And I think that's healthy for the economy as well as the services that it provides to the people. I'm particularly concerned about you raise the fees for commercial activity. There are we're already terribly underserved at the airport. There are a lot of types of aircraft you can't get serviced here. And if you had an airworthiness issue, you can't fly the airplane. Say, how are you going to get it serviced? Okay? That just doesn't make any sense to think you're going to get somebody from a distance. You're going to have to fly them there, and then you have to pay their fees in order to do, maybe it's just simple maintenance on the aircraft. Also, Devin Darrenfield helps me with my biannual, and, I'm going to have to take him off the airport and to Santa Ynez or down to Ventura for those services. I mean, that doesn't make sense, does it, really? Anyway, I think you need to give some serious consideration to why you want to wipe out general aviation on this airport. Remember, whatever you tax, you get less of, and whatever you subsidize, you can get more of. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Alberti. Alexander. That was tough. It's hard to read. And I'm no longer accepting public comment either in chambers or online. New public comment.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak. We want to thank also all the independent contractors on the airport for all their hard work and their time and their labor. I really have nothing more to add, but I would like to make the comment. I have been a CFO and a chief compliance officer on Wall Street for over 40 years. From the numbers we just received, on the public side of this, the numbers don't seem to add up at all. As was said earlier, the numbers are a high-level overview. So on that note, I just want to make the recommendation that for the airport, it goes back to the Airport Commission, and they review it and give time for public comment on that side of the finances. I know you're going to be looking at it again next week, but I think additional time will be needed for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mark Mattingly. I now have Nick Kuntz, followed by Jim Marston, followed by Lee Heller.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman, council members, Finance Committee members. Today, an able-bodied motorist who parks downtown for a full workday will pay about $16.25. The fee increase proposed here represents about a 30% increase for those people. Putting aside the parking, the subsidized or the reduced fee parking pass, a disabled motorist will be looking at a 300% increase in their daily expense for the same workday. So that's a grossly disproportionate impact on this community's disabled citizens by a factor of 10. As you know, I serve the city on the Access Advisory Committee, a committee ostensibly to advise staff and council on matters related to accessibility. The AAC was not even informed of these proposed changes until last night, much less asked for input. I'm advocating not for myself, as I've never found these pay lots accessible. I can't even get into them. Can't pull the ticket out. All of this fee increase is to push the disabled to a contactless system, which makes it less accessible. And, you know, the downtown parking group brought the proposed changes for the citywide automated parking system to the Access Advisory Committee several years ago, and it was unanimously opposed due to these accessibility concerns. And we questioned how the system would accommodate the different fees and grace periods for disabled motorists. We simply asked that downtown parking pump the brakes to ensure that accessibility was accommodated. Our concerns were dismissed. We were informed that it was too late. The pilot was already underway. We were assured that it would be accessible and the fees would not change. Now every pay lot is less accessible to drivers like me, and the fees for disabled are proposed to be raised disproportionately. The fee increase targeting the disabled may not even have the intended effect of increasing revenue. More disabled motorists will seek out the on-street green curbs, 15-minute zones, which they can legally use for up to 36 hours. After all we've been through with 3 years
Time is up. You can wrap up.
2 seconds.
Perfect.
After all we've been through the last 3 years with inaccessible parklets and the complete reversal on the outdoor dining licensing fees, I feel council has completely betrayed this community's disabled citizens, and endorsing this fee would only increase and add insult to injury.
Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. Jim Marston, followed by Lee Heller. Followed by Mr. Tokarian.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Marston. I'm chair of the Access Advisory Committee. To staff, and as Mr. Kuntz said, we were never notified looking for any input on this. And it was mentioned there was 20,000 requests from disabled placard holders. I don't think any of them have ever been asked about what do you think about this. So I'm very disappointed on how it was done. It was not transparent at all. I liked Ms. Harmon's and Mr. Friedman's suggestions. I think they were very well done. I think a hybrid program might be the way to start. And what everybody forgets is that we have the thing called visitors that come to this town, and they don't know about any pass that's available. So this is fine for your everyday visitor to work or downtown. I hope a 50% discount at least. But the visitors are out, and there's no advertising about that at all. Senior moment here. Thank you. But please try to get this hybrid program going.
I'm getting a little older myself, but I understood exactly what you were saying while you weren't saying anything. Thank you, Mr. Marston. Dr. Heller.
Chair Friedman and council members, I'll try not to have a senior moment, but that's getting harder and harder to do. I'm here to speak in support of my disabled neighbors because I'm concerned that the proposed fee increases disproportionately impact them. I'm kind of skeptical that the camera license plate reader can't detect a disabled license plate. I appreciate the fact that when I use Scan, Pay, and Go, the gate just opens for me. But I can't speak to that technology at the moment. I hope a conversation could be had with the vendor about whether or not it can be fine-tuned to recognize disabled parking license plates. I realize the placards might be more of a challenge because they're hanging inside the window. I think you should go with at least a 50% subsidy or reduction. It's already very expensive to be a disabled person in this country. It's much harder to do basic things. Nick talks about the fact he can't even use the parking lots because he can't read the tickets. And also, I would say that if people are going to be purchasing these prepaid cards, which only applies to locals and not visitors, that the mechanisms for doing so be made as easy as possible, including mailing in the application, and if there has to be proof of photograph of their license plate or whatever, so that people don't have to make a special trip to City Hall, particularly if they are not comfortable doing this online. Thank you.
Thank you. Hard to read, but Tokariev? Couldn't read the first name, sorry. If you could just state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dmitry Tokarev, and I just want to say that I'm against the airport fees. I'm a commercial pilot, commercially rated, and I'm going to be a flight instructor. And I'm hoping to be an independent flight instructor on the field. And I know that those fees are probably going to prevent me from doing so. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for speaking today. Terry Harris, followed by Karen Kahn, followed by Michael Terbasi, and our last speaker will be Brad Froling.
Hi, I'm Terry Harris. I've been a career flight instructor on Santa Barbara Field for 36 years. Right. Oh, right. Hi. I've been a career flight instructor for 36 years on the field. Most instructors will move on to the airlines, and I chose to stay as a teacher so that I could be self-employed and I could work around my kids' schedule while I raised my children. Since 2007, I served 3 times on the Minimum Standards Committee to work out things, wording that makes it possible for independent instructors and for aircraft owners to stick with an instructor who knows their airplane very well. The minimum, so we have amended them 3 times. Sorry, I'm going from 3 minutes to 2 here. So every year we would pay a couple $100, and to get a permit, I would come in with my business license, my FAA certificates, and badging fees, and they just put it all in a file, and it took no time at all. And now I'm semi-retired, and I'm doing more on the field than anybody else. And I went over my tax returns for the last few years. I've averaged 16 to 17 billable hours a month. And my gross receipts average 15,000. And the new fees the big tragedy of it will be that it's going to take a lot of talent off the field. The airline pilots, the jet pilots, nobody's going to pay that. And we're going to lose a lot of important talent.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Next up is Karen Kahn.
Thank you. My name's Karen Kahn. I'm a retired airline captain, master CFI, and aircraft owner on the field for 35 plus years, and an 18-year former airport commissioner. I just want to say that I see this as a basic issue of air safety. And if you're talking about training and charging people to find decent instructors, upping the price of instruction is going to be a real detriment to safety because people just won't do it. They'll do without. It's also, when you get into the maintenance area, a big issue of safety. I mean, I already fly my airplane someplace else for its annual maintenance, and that's because the people here don't have the expertise. I was told, gee, I have an airplane like that in my shop, but I don't know how to work on that one, or I can find out. But it's an issue of safety, and we don't want that at this airport. We want to encourage aviation safety. We don't want to quash it. And finally, I think the expense of any accident that might occur as somebody not getting the training they need, not getting the maintenance they should have done, the expense is going to far exceed what the fees are that you'll collect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Michael Terbesi, followed by Brad Froling, who will be our final public comment.
Hi, I'm Michael Terbesi. I am I'm a plane owner via a LLC, which could be interpreted as a corporation, ergo potentially for profit. I'm also the captain of the Santa Barbara Sheriff Aero Squadron, which has been an organization that has served the community for 82 years, of which is many of the other volunteers also operate their aircraft under the auspices of a partnership by way of an LLC. The challenge that I have with the way that things are currently worded is the vagueness of the special events, the use of the Latin term et cetera, which would mean the rest. So if you look at the way that the either commercial or non-commercial activities, et cetera is a big open-ended item, because that could be, and not saying it's the disposition of this airport director, but some airport directors in the past have operated in a very malicious manner, and you know, this could be misconstrued in a lot of different ways as a penalization of organizations like CalDART, Direct Relief, and others that operate in emergency situations. Just to kind of tag on to the parking issue, as far as license plate recognition, I work for Intel Corporation. There's ways to recognize things like disabled placards. So that's absolutely in the realm of possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And last public commenter is Brad Froling.
Hi, thanks for your time today. Brad Froling, I'm a local businessman. I've never flown a plane, I never will. I'm here to object to the fees just on the basis of the fees were brought to my attention, and whenever our city proposes fees, when they're so far from being commercially reasonable, it's something that is very frustrating as a citizen. It doesn't help anybody, and it makes us look like we're just totally isolated as a city. So they're not reasonable. It's not practical for all the reasons they talked about, for safety, for instruction. I don't know if there's a perception that everyone that flies a plane is got cash to burn, but we have an incredible aviation history in Santa Barbara. I'm aware of that, and this is just not a good look for the city. And it's so here to object to the fees. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so now we're back to, oh, sorry, our online, so who's up first?
Chair Friedman, we have two hands raised online. First will be Sean Sullivan, and second will be someone from Accessible Santa Barbara. Sean Sullivan, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
This is Sean Sullivan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I am the owner of Above All Aviation, and my point on these fees is the $3,000 isn't enough. Our rent is $24,000 a month between our maintenance hangar and our flight school, $24,000 a month. There are 3 maintenance facilities on this airport, not just one. We don't deny people access to our maintenance facility unless there's a darn good reason, which there are sometimes because people have harassed us. By allowing these people that call themselves small businesses, if they're truly a business, then they don't care, then they'll pay the fees just like we do. I'm standing behind all the maintenance facilities, all the for-profit businesses on this field, because we're taking a stand, because for years and years and years, no fees have been collected, no fees have been paid. They're operating for $300 a year. I wish I could operate for $300 a year. To say that we don't have qualified instructors, we have an ATP, we have gold seals. There's really not a lot of airplanes we cannot train in, but no one gives us a shot because they don't want to pay. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Accessible Santa Barbara. Accessible Santa Barbara, please unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Will Railing on behalf of Accessible Santa Barbara and Unincorporated Nonprofit Association. Since time is short, let me first just propose that you give immediate feedback now that the 2.5-hour free period for placard holders be retained and that the daily max for people with placards not be raised 470% from $7 to $33. Please say something now so staff understands they need to raise something else to balance the budget, and not balance the budget on the backs of people with disabilities. On behalf of the 2.5-hour free period, the logic for this has always been in part that it takes people with disabilities a lot longer to get from the parking space to where they're going. And so to reduce that from 2.5 hours to 1 hour is, first of all, sort of an infinite percentage increase from many people can do their business within 2.5 hours. It could be a lunch or a doctor appointment or whatever. So for many people with placards, their entire trip, which was free, will now not be free. And beyond that, I just want to say a word on this program because this whole mess of going to self-service with technology has taken a program. I mean, the equipment requirement of taking a ticket on the way in has never been accessible. The city does not have a program, service, or activity that is accessible to people with disabilities, but it has provided reasonable accommodation in the form of the incredibly helpful booth attendant who pops out and presses the button and gets the ticket for you. So with that reasonable accommodation or reasonable modification eliminated, the city is hurtling toward an ADA Title II violation here, and that should be kept in mind on this overall longer-term program of going to no staff at the entrances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Railing. All right, that is the final public commenter, and so we're going to come back to the committee. So just for staff, I'll break it down into, we'll talk first if there's any. First, I want to thank all the public commenters. We had a lot today, and you all provided valuable impact to all of us. So if there's anything not related to downtown parking or airport that you'd like to discuss or give direction to, not hearing any, I think we're okay with all those. So we'll go next into the downtown parking and then the airport. Who wants to go with downtown parking first? Member Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. And I'm so sorry, Ms. Clark. May I just ask you a follow-up question based on, and I know time is short, so I'm going to try to be very brief. Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. No, I'm sorry. We heard from Mr. Kuntz and Mr. Railing. I think they had different percentages, but it was about the increase in 300%, 430%. And what I'm a little confused about is that let's go with 300. Is that 300% increase what it would be to take away the current amount and start charging the full amount? Or does that 300% increase take into account what was proposed as this 30% discount fee on the card?
So Chair Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, I haven't worked out the percentages in that way, so I don't know exactly, but I would know that it sort of depends on how you look at it. So, you know, if you look at this, for example, the current amount, which is 2.5 hours subsidized, so that's 2.5 hours without paying a fee, and then $7 at our current $2.50 rate. That works out to, you can do 2 hours plus, about 3 hours. So your total would be about 5.5 hours there, and we don't charge partial hours, so 6 hours essentially. If you were to go to our proposed rate structure of the $3 an hour in the 60-minute subsidized period, again, that would be 2.5 hours, and then that $7 covers like 2 hours. So if you want to look at correct.
Okay.
So,
Thank you,
if
that's
you want to just look at the daily max and say, okay, $7 versus $33, then yeah, it's a much bigger gap. But I would note that the large majority of our customers do not stay 12 hours, which is what you would need to do to hit that daily max. So the large majority of our customers spend less time than that in the parking lot. So it's comparing $7 to $33 is probably not the most apt comparison. I would take a look at the time that you're in there and the difference in that cost. And the way that it works out essentially with, if you're talking about 5 hours of parking overall for the disabled customer with using the discounted prepaid card, it comes to about $12.60. And so if you were to raise the current disabled rate proportionate to a $3 an hour fee, so just saying an hour for free and then $3 an hour thereafter, again, it would be about $12. So that's how we landed on that 30%, that was sort of the most comparable to what we're currently offering if that was an updated fee. But it really depends on how much time you're looking at and you want to analyze. So.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. That will be all the questions for me. So this is really complicated, and I appreciate Ms. Clark stating what should have been obvious, but is true. Like, a lot of it depends on how you look at it and what you're comparing and the metrics that you're using to evaluate. So I don't have a number that I can recommend to staff today. I just don't, there's too many question marks for me about what some of these mean to be able to say exactly where I think we should land and what that number should be. But I will say two things. It is very important to me that we subsidize parking for our disabled community. So that I am just putting out there as something that is, I think, a value of our whole city and needs to continue to be prioritized, especially in light of the challenges that we are hearing more and more often, but that really should have been dealt with more effectively from the start with regard to this change to the automated parking structures. And I know we went to that for good reason as well. We're trying to balance a lot of things here, and none of it's easy. But given that those challenges are real, I think it's imperative from my perspective that we do continue to provide this subsidized parking. So again, what that number is, I'm not sure. I can't really do the math on the fly up here, but I would like to see maybe that gap that Ms. Clark talked about made a little smaller, I guess is a way to put a fine point on that. And then the second point I would make about this, I do appreciate the challenges with regard to staffing and how to make that work. So I think a hybrid program is really the way to go. I think that there could be a lot of benefits to that. If we're really concerned about the bottlenecking, we could even provide a greater discount to our residents who get the prepaid card, really further incentivizing them to get that card and not make the call. I mean, there's lots of ways that we can do that. I realize it's an extra burden on staff to run both of those programs, but I think certainly as a pilot, but maybe even permanently, having both of these options seems like the best of both worlds and really the only equitable way forward. So that I would very much advocate for and really appreciate that this conversation has come up. And I know, Ms. Clark, you're doing a huge amount of work to try to put this whole program together. So I really appreciate it, and I think we can make this work, and that would just be my two comments on the parking.
Great, thank you. In the interest of time, first I want to again thank those who spoke to this item, both for accessibility and for the airport. I concur with what my colleague said about the need to continue to offer discounted parking for those with disabilities. I think there's a lot that was said today that speaks to the value of it. And since we're not actually voting today, what I'd like to say is to try to capture as much of the conversation when it comes to council of the things we were considering. So it's not a no recommendation. It's like, these are the priorities that we discussed and we want to have them. So I do like the idea of a pilot program because I think it will allow us to try to work with those who have disabilities who the card might not be right for. In particular, those who are not from Santa Barbara, who are coming up for a weekend or they're coming up for a very special family event, and we don't want to have this be the thing they remember is that they didn't have accessible parking if they're coming for a wedding or a graduation or something like that. What I'm also interested in addition to the pilot program is the trade-off on keeping it at 2.5 hours. I think a point was made that the reason it's longer is because it just takes longer for people to go from wherever they are, and they just had the mobility issues that 75 minutes doesn't cut it. And then I am interested in the 50% discount. I think that's reasonable. So put that in there, and then something I think if we end up going with the pilot program, again, that will be up to the full council, is it would make sense to me to after, even if we don't go with that, but if we go with something else, is to have a check-in about 6 months through the fiscal year with the Access Advisory Committee so that we can look at how the program's working or not and get their feedback on things. And so at some point mid-year, because then that would allow them to have feedback on whatever council ultimately adopts, and then that can be used as information that will help us in the next budget year, a year from now. So that's where I'm at. Again, we don't need to vote on that, but just some of the things that came up. I'll start with the airport. It's very complex. There is a need to, with general aviation, to ensure that we promote that and we keep that and keep it cost reasonable. And right now, where I think we might have a way, and I don't think it's going to make anybody happy, is I think you make a good point that the $3,000 fee could be higher than it should be. And there is some, according to Mr. Hastert spoke today, it could be reasonable to bring that fee down. And I think that since it is a pilot program, and again, I would think that 2,000, around that 2,000, because that's what others are at for the annual fee. But also, again, go back to the, if that's where the council wants to go back to the airport commission mid-year and get some data on what it's doing and make that adjustment, because I think there is an opportunity for that. And I also, when it comes to council, there was a good point on the clarification of what's exempted, what's not. If we can tighten that language up when it comes to council so it is actually in the written materials we have, that will go a long way to getting some of the concerns that it's more broad than it is, and then the council can have that wording in there. So again, we're not voting on it, but that's where I'm at, is that reduction down, take it down by a third, evaluate it as a pilot program, and we'll reevaluate it next year and go back to the airport commission. Do you have any comments?
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Yes, just briefly, again, I feel like I'm almost a broken record here saying, what I know is that there's a lot I don't know about this fee and how it's going to impact business owners and airport users. And so I'm almost loath to make a specific number recommendation. I, too, believe that it's too high. One of the things that I would really be interested in learning more about, and it may be too late for this year, maybe it's something that goes back to Airport Commission, but can we do a sliding scale model? I mean, that to me seems like the fairest way to navigate. No, please. It came from you guys, so I know that's hard, and the administration of a sliding scale is never easy, and believe me, it will come with its own problems, so you save that clapping. You'll be back here and saying it's not working, I'm sure, but that, to me, allows us, I think, to think about what it is that we want from and for our airport. And flat fees are so often just like a broad brush that ends up keeping a lot of folks out who could really add to the value and community of what it is that we're trying to put together. So I would be interested in knowing if that's feasible, if we can administrate that. Are there other airports that have a sliding scale approach? How could we do that? Would we base it on tax, I mean, there's a million ways to administer a sliding scale fee, but I would really like to do that because a $2,000 fee could be just right for some. 150 might be far more appropriate for others. Both of those people could be people that we really want and need and would like to celebrate at our airport. So that would be where my interest is, and I'd love to hear more about whether that's possible. Thank you.
And with that, this meeting is adjourned. We have a 2 o'clock council meeting, so we are adjourned. Thank you.